What's up, cooks? Welcome to the Card Kitchen. I am the Card Chef, and today we are cooking up a custom mini set. This will be a part 1 of 3, so stay tuned for the next 2 videos. I did a whole bunch of custom cards. I made them all myself. I didn't draw them myself, but I did make these cards, every single part of this card myself, through a Pokemon card maker online. You can do it yourselves if you feel like it. Go online. There's a ton of Pokemon card making websites out there that you can use yourself. In fact, I encourage you to do so, and I would also encourage you to join my Discord and post all of those custom cards that you make. And what I will do is I will go through all of them, and weekly what I will do is I will review all the custom cards dropped in the Discord. So check out my Discord in the description below. So the 5 cards we're going to be looking at in part 1 are 5 EX Pokemon. All of them evolved from Pokemon from Genetic Apex, because 4 of the 5 we actually don't have a single card yet for them. The first one obviously being Scizor EX, who evolves from Scyther. We haven't had any version of Scizor at all yet, and I think it's about time that we get one. We're also going to be doing Steelix EX and Blissey EX, as well as Kingdra EX. They all evolve from Onix, Chansey, and Seadra. We don't have a single one of those evolutions yet, and I think we deserve them. And then the 5th one will be Rhyperior EX. We already have a Rhyperior, a baby version of it, a non-EX, but it's not the greatest and not played very often. So I did do those 5 for part 1 and for part 2, just to give you a little tidbit to stay tuned for the next one. It will be all baby Pokemon. That's right, baby Pokemon. And then I will let you know in part 2 what part 3 will be all about. But anyways, let's get into the first card. The first one is Scizor EX. So it's a stage 1, again, evolves from Scyther. It is a steel type, even though Scyther is a grass type, and I gave it 150 HP. I gave it a weakness to fire, obviously, and a 1 retreat cost. I gave it a 2 energy requirement, 1 metal, 1 colorless, because Scyther does take grass energy. So if you wanted to play 2 energies in this deck, it is possible. And then I called it X Scizor. It's a very common move for Scizor EX, and it does 50 plus, so it does 50 damage for 2 energy, and then it says this attack does 50 damage to one of your opponent's benched Pokemon. So basically 2 energy doing 100 damage, but 50 to the active and 50 to your choosing of the Pokemon on the bench. So I think this is pretty decent. I think 150, and the reason I gave it 150 is steel type Pokemon, more often or not, have a pretty high defense stat. They're pretty bulky because they're steel types. So I did decided to give it like a 150 instead of a 140. Most of the more bulkier Pokemon have something like a 160. I didn't want to do that, and I did want to give it a 2 energy requirement, and honestly 50 and 50 is good, but it's not obviously the strongest either. I do think 50 to the bench could be very, very strong, but 50 to the active, like, this is not going to be your main Pokemon. You're not going to be running games with just Scizor. You're going to have to play it with something else, because you're never going to be able to knock out all those EX Pokemon with just Scizor EX. So I do feel like it's pretty balanced, but I'm sure you'll let me know. In fact, please let me know what you think of all the cards in the comment section below. And not only that, I made all these cards myself. I didn't draw them, but I did put piece by piece each part, the background, the effects, and the Pokemon itself into the card. So let me know what you think of the cards, and if you think they're any good, if they look a little bit amateur. I am an amateur. I've never done this before. So let me know what you think. And then the next card we are going to look at is the Steelix EX. So Steelix EX, of course, evolves from Onix, and this Steelix EX has 160 HP, so on the higher side for a stage 1 Pokemon. It is obviously a steel type, or a metal type, I should say. It has a 4 retreat cost. I didn't correctly put the right retreat cost, but I did give it a 4 retreat cost. It is also weak to fire, and it has a 4 energy requirement for Iron Tail. It does it requires 2 metal and 2 colorless, and it says 100 plus. So 100 plus, 20 damage for each energy attached to either Onix or Steelix EX last turn. So the way that works, and the reason why I did it, is because this can be played with so many different things. Like Scyther and Scizor, Onix evolves from a fighting type Pokemon in Onix, who most likely will require, even if a new version came out, would have to require a fighting type energy to be put onto it. Now, I wouldn't play fighting type energies in the deck, but what you can do is on the previous turn, because remember, this does 20 damage for each energy attached to either Onix or Steelix EX last turn. Basically, what you can do is you could put a fighting type energy onto a Onix from a Brock, because Brock works with Onix, and then you can play this with something like Dialga, and Dialga can put 2 metal energy onto the Onix as well, which means you attach 3 energy last turn. If you also manually attached to the Onix with a steel type, basically what you've done is you've actually attached 4 last turn, so this attack would do 180 damage. If you didn't manually attach, because you had to manually attach to Dialga, you would do 160. If you only got the Brock, you would obviously do 120, and if you only did the Dialga, you would do 140. So there's a ton of different breakpoints and different types of attacks that you can do with your Steelix EX, so I think this is pretty cool, and I actually think it would be pretty balanced. I don't think it would be too strong, because trying to get 4 energy to do 180 is super hard to do. Even with 3, it means you would have to have the Onix on the bench, Dialga in the front with 2 energy on it, a Brock in hand, and a whole bunch of other stuff in order to get all those different energies onto your Steelix. So let me know what you think of this one. And then the next one is going to be a Blissey EX. So this card right here is a stage 1, and yes, I did give it 180 HP. Chansey and Blissey are 2 of the most bulky HP Pokemon in the entire game, both in video games and in TCG. It had no other choice but to be a very high HP, even though it's only a stage 1. But basically what I did is I gave it the same attack as the current Rhyperior EX that we have. The current Rhyperior EX has Carefree Press, but it takes 4 energy and does 100 damage and heals 30 from itself. In this case, the Carefree Press only requires 3, does less damage, it does 90 instead of 100, and heals less as well, does heals 20 from this Pokemon every time it attacks. But because there's so much ways to heal this in the current meta, things like Irida if you play water, Pokemon Center Lady, capes to increase its HP, and potions, and then of course its attack. This thing would be very hard to knock out, so I do think 90 for 3 is not great, but when you can stay on the field for so long potentially, I think it's pretty good. But I also had to make sure I gave it a very high retreat cost, so I'm very comfortable with giving this a 4 retreat cost. I think it would be very, very good. And then I'm also going to be talking about baby Pokemon in the next part 2, which will have some healing effects as well, so stay tuned for that. And so now let's get into the next one, which is Kingdra EX. So this one right here is of course evolving from Scizor, who's a water type, but Kingdra is also a dragon type, so I gave it 170 HP on the lower side for a stage 2, but it's still okay. I find it's still going to be able to absorb damage and then dish out a lot. And basically I gave it 1 retreat, no weakness, because none of the dragon types that we currently have a weakness. They usually are weak to things like, I think, fairy, but we don't have fairy type in the game yet either, which is kind of unfortunate, but that is just the way it is. They will probably come into the game at some point, but I'm just not sure when. I gave it the move Dragon Rage, which takes 1 water, 1 lightning, and 1 colorless energy for the attack. And then it does 50x, and it says 50 damage for each different type of energy attached to this Pokemon. So it has to be different types of energy attached to it. You're already going to be doing at least 100 damage with this because you're more than likely going to be playing water and lightning because it already requires water and lightning. And then it has a colorless attachment to it, which means you can also play something else. That would be pretty hard to do, or it could be pretty easy to do with things like maybe a Leafeon or a Giratina ramping onto itself and then utilizing Dawn. That would be pretty cool. So basically this, if it had 3 different types of energy on it, this attack would do 150 damage for 3 energies, but they would have to be 3 different. So even though 3 energy for 150 seems like crazy, it's honestly probably a lot harder to get 3 different energy on one Pokemon that's a stage 2 than it otherwise would to get 4 of the same on one Pokemon for the same damage. So I actually think it's pretty balanced, but again, I'm sure you'll let me know in the comments below. And then the last one is Rhyperior EX. I love this card. This is actually the favorite one, my favorite one that I made, just the way I made it look. I think I did a pretty damn good job with it. Coming out of the photo, adding all the animations of the rocks and stuff like that, I think it feels and looks pretty cool. And let me just make it a little bigger. There you go. So Rhyperior EX evolves from Rhydon, who evolves from Rhyhorn. Again, we have a Rhyperior in the game already, but it's not an EX, and it's not the greatest. So basically, I gave it 180 HP for the stage 2. I gave it an ability and an attack. It's weak to grass, and I gave it a 4 retreat cost. The ability is called Dig, which says when you evolve this Pokemon, discard the top card of your opponent's deck. So basically it's a milling effect. For those that don't know, the Rhyperior that we have in the game actually mills your own deck, but traditionally in TCG and regular Pokemon TCG, Rhydon and Rhyperior have always been cards that mill your opponent's deck. Now, in this game, you can't actually mill your opponent out. Once we have 0 cards, we just keep playing the game. It doesn't matter. But milling your opponent's deck is still very good because you're denying them one of the cards that they need or want in their deck. You could be denying them a stage 1 or a stage 2, a Sabrina, a Cyrus, a Red, very important cards that they may need. And not only that, so yes, you might think, but we only get to do it once. Well, actually, its attack reads, it's a Horn Drill, does 120 base with 3 energy, all fighting. But the effect of the attack says discard the top card of your opponent's deck. So we keep doing it. So we do 120 damage, which is also great. But I also find 120 isn't the greatest. If it was, we would probably be playing things like Machamp. But it's really hard to find breakpoints with 120. Those breakpoints that we're trying to find in the game currently are things like 130 or more. So 120 isn't the greatest. It also has a tremendously high retreat cost. And then once you start attacking, it does start to mill your opponent's deck every single turn. So you can deny them quite a bit of cards, which actually may help you win the game. So again, I do think this feels pretty balanced, but again, I'm sure you'll let me know in the comments below, and please do. But that's it for part 1. Stay tuned for part 2 where we're doing baby Pokemon, and then stay tuned for part 3 after that, where we're going to be doing more EX Pokemon, but very specific type of EX Pokemon that I want to talk about and save for later because they play along with a baby Pokemon that I've created. So anyways, with that being said, like, subscribe, and share, and as always, keep cooking.